Did you know Candida yeast overgrowth causes chronic fatigue, digestive issues, lack of focus, poor memory, skin issues, anxiety, depression, and much, much more? There's a free Candida Summit, which is airing July 9th through July 15th, and you will learn all of this, plus how to eliminate it. The link is below to sign up, so why not sign up? It's 100% free, and you will become much healthier by learning this valuable information.
And all of their groups now, you have Bilderberger, Club of Rome, all of that. But most of the hierarchy I've ever seen, it's the reason why I don't care about the hierarchy. I want to be away from it. But the hierarchy really, like I said, I believe comes from the Jesuits down, Jesuits, Illuminati, and that. If you read,
go ahead.
There's a book that was written called The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris, who was a Jesuit back in 1975. And by the way, he said that they've already decided that World War III, that the United States of America will lose World War III. It's already been decided. That's what he says in the book. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But my point still is that when I talked about the example a while ago of the guy down in Jacksonville, but you also had last year somebody got caught for like carrying 18 Mexicans in the back of his truck down in Texas, and he's like, how did they get there or whatever? This is human. I'll go back to my very first show with you. I told you the problem all along is human nature. And if people are not going to correct themselves and stop being involved in this, and I mean even be in collusion with governments that are involved in it, you have to separate from it, or you're in collusion with it. And the problem ends up being human nature. It does not end up being that there's 6 evil people on the planet and that's where all the evil comes from. That's not the way it works. And like, I'll give you an example in Uganda, because we got recognition from Uganda last year as well. If a man over there believes his wife is running around on him, you know what the punishment he gives her is?
What, death? I don't know.
No, he just throws acid on her face.
It's terrible.
What
can she do if he's a...
Nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. This is... I have to give Rush Limbaugh credit for one thing, and he used to say it. People's minds, you cannot deal with the level of human problems that are there today if you actually knew. I mean, there's 8 million children a year that die from lack of good water, lack of clean water. I mean, the amount of misery that goes on here, and I think I told somebody recently, we were talking, I said, if you had to look at the entire history of the world currently and put it in a book into the Dewey Decimal System, it would be listed under tragic comedy.
Is it worse today than it was before? Because some stats show that we're a lot better off today.
I think we're better off. I actually think the world is more peaceful now than it used to be.
That's what it shows. Even though we're pathetic, we are. Right?
Okay.
I mean,
and this is kind of like, I'm glad we're going to this level with it, because I see that it might be a dumbing down and it might be a complete entertainment and get people just, like they said in the movie, a network that all anxiety would be tranquilized and all boredom would be amused or entertained. Well, geez, where are we at with that now? But it actually is better. I mean, used to, people if they traveled anywhere, they couldn't travel by themselves. They were on covered wagons with an entire, 5, 6, 10 families all at once, or they were in caravans because, that was the highway robbers, the highway guys, you could get killed and left on the road and all your stuff taken from you. So I believe that the world is headed, where we're headed is toward more peace. Now, our ability to blow ourselves up today, that's a different matter. It's a lot greater.
Yeah, our technology is very advanced and we're getting even more advanced. That's why I'm so concerned about corruption and people in power who are corrupt, because the technology is too powerful.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have complained about the stuff that happened out in California. If you look at it looks like scalar technology. Trees burning. Yes. Yeah, trees burning from the inside out. I mean, there's more to it than, one house is burnt down, the next house is not. I mean, but the question always is going to come back to, okay, well, what is the fix for it? Well, in my opinion, as far as big nation states, and this is something I mentioned to you when we talked before we scheduled the show, I don't think there is a fix. I think there's only being able to get out. But I also believe that self-determination in and of itself, it's mentioned in the UN Charter, tons of UN resolutions on the right of self-determination, and it's becoming more and more popular. And I think I have an article around here. This one, yeah. They're even now talking about dividing California up into 3 more states. And Peter Thiel has come out and said that the United States needs to be broken up into 200 countries. So I believe it's a double-edged sword, and it's going to be used to break up societies into smaller and smaller groups. They have so much control through the monetary system now, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because.
So the states being separated, you believe it's so that they can control us more. Now, do you see this being, California is the first phase of it, which looks like it might end up happening. We'll see. Now, do you see that starting to happen all over the place with, you said, like 200 countries? What kind of timeline do you think this is happening?
They plan long term. These people's plans are, they planned 3 world wars way back in the 1850s. I mean,
but why? Why do they plan so long term if they can only live for 100 years?
Because they pass it on to their families. They pass it on to their posterity. I mean, you can't get past the Constitution where it says we do this for ourselves and our posterity. And of course, people don't want to believe the words. They're like, oh, well, I'm posterity. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not their posterity. You're not their posterity. They didn't do it for you. And
who are they? Let's get into who are they? It's the Jesuits or the ruling family, like the 15 most wealthy families.
Well, 13 they call the cabal.
No, but how does that relate to the Jesuits, the 13 ruling families versus the Jesuits?
They're all part of it. I mean, it's being controlled by the bankers behind the scenes now. And these are the big 13 banking families. And, I'll give you an example of the things that I see, like right now. I see so many people having hope in things that they put out for them to have hope in, like cryptocurrency. I mean, you would think that this stuff was like the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, it's the best thing that's ever been created. And what they're really creating is a digital ledger just to put all assets on the planet on a ledger and then create one world currency. And people don't think this is going to happen. I'm like, I watched eGold and Crown Gold and all those companies go down. Northfed went down. Why? For competing with the Federal Reserve. They have a monopoly on printing the currency. But that doesn't mean that they're going to come out immediately and they can wait 50 years to take somebody down. They don't care. They're not in a hurry. And not only that, they did a report on cryptos. The NSA released their report on it back in 1996. Well, they probably worked on that report for 20 years.
So how did they get to the point where they were so patient? Because so many people want to do something in their lifetime so they can see something. Why are they so patient, whereas the rest of us, is it because they have so much power and so much and they've seen it work that they're patient?
I don't really know. I wish I knew a little bit. I wish, sometimes I wonder, it's like, God, would they ever come and invite me in and like really tell me what's actually going on? And then would I be on board with it? I'm like, nah, I don't think I'd be on board. I don't like what goes on. I really don't like it. But at the same time, I'm not all that enamored with our species. We're not that great. I mean, we're doing horrendous things here. I mean, Well,
I think if it wasn't them, it'd be somebody else doing the same thing. I mean, that's the problem. That's why you need to have balance. The whole point of having balance so that nobody can just be a tyrant. Because naturally everybody becomes tyrants.
Yeah, but see, I believe that these tyrants that they're talking about are they're allowing people to vote for who they want to be in over them.
But don't they pick them initially?
Well,
don't they give us those 2 crappy choices?
Yeah, they do. They control the 2 crappy choices. But there again, the only thing I've seen, like I said, I owe the judges a huge debt of gratitude. The only thing I've ever seen that they honor is self-determination. And I'm not quite sure that the Bar Association itself is not its own sovereign society. There's certain things there that I can't find out. And I'm going to say even I mean, look, I got 25,000 hours or more research into this stuff. Just the documentation I pulled up today, this is Senate report. Everybody needs to go read 93-549. This is all about emergency war powers. Tells you right in here that since 1933, Constitution is not even applicable. And this was a report done by Congress.
When was that report?
1973. It was put out in November of 73. And what it says, it's the strange. I read sometimes the strangest words. It says in here that they knew that great extensive powers had been granted to the president, but they didn't know the extent of it. I'm like, how could you not know the extent of it? Somebody had to know the extent of it. I mean, this is a Senate report. This is allegedly by senators who are competent.
Well, I'm not so sure if there's all that many competent. people in Congress and Senate. I think there's a handful of people that actually understand things.
But
I've been told that a lot of people, and from high-level people, that most of them have control files and that they're very controlled. And the ones who are clueless, they don't really care about because they don't know what they're doing anyways. And the few that really do get it, they're very controlled. Is that your experience?
There's control files on everyone. On every single person. They have so much data on people anymore. It's just unbelievable, including, me, you. It doesn't matter. A control file, though, I just think it still comes back to contract. Somewhere along the line, they've signed on the contracts, they've been a part of the system, and they can't just walk away. Kind of no different than John F. Kennedy. They put him there, and then he turned around and bit the hand that fed him. Or at least it looked like he was trying to.
Well, he was trying to issue his own currency, right? He was trying to do his own Fed notes, and that's what I think topped him off.
Well,
there was other things too.
Well, the contract with America is you have to pay your debts. And if Kennedy says, okay, well, this is wrong, and there's been a plot, fomented to control the American people or whatever, and put them under absolute servitude and all that kind of thing. Well, his answer for that is also self-determination, not to think he can change it at the top position that they control. Because there's still that hierarchy there.
It'd be like the president of a company just saying, I want to take over this company. Well, no, you can quit and start your own company.
Right, exactly. A perfect example, thank you. Perfect example.
And so self-determination is like, okay, I'm going to quit this company. I'm going to start my own company. If people want to quit their company, come work for me, they can.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
Now, going back to what we said a while ago about competency or whatever, my point about the words in this report were not that the report's not a good report, and I think people should read this, even what Congress had to say, but just the fact that they made the statement that they didn't know the extent of the powers that they themselves had granted. Come on, that's just retarded. That's just a dumb statement. And they spent months and months and months to put this report together, probably years. And this had to do with emergency war powers. And I want to find something for you just under these states of national emergency have never been undone. And it says in that report that it actually exercised 470 brand new statutes to give the president even more control. Now, I don't know why he needed more control, because I have it in front of me here, Jubilee of the Constitution, which was written by John Quincy Adams. And in that, he says that the president had more than dictatorial power. This so-called three branches of government being equal in stature, he said the power of the Congress were granted in limited form, but the powers of the presidency in unlimited form. Well, how can you be equal? That's not equal.
But even though they might have unlimited powers, they still have to answer to a greater authority that Americans don't get to see and are unaware of.
Well, some Americans now are, and they have a choice to make at that point in time when they do become aware. And part of I think that they do today is they do control things, like the whole Vegas thing was controlled, right?
Oh, that's obvious. What the hell was that? But keep going.
And nobody's even talking about it today. Nobody even cares. It's like life just goes on.
Well, it's like they get so used to the BS that they just keep. I don't.
Well, here's the thing that we're looking at when I come out with other websites, getoutofthesystem.com. We're looking at a new one called Learn to Think Again. New creeds, new catchphrases. I just was on a trip where I met with 40 of the top podcasters in the U.S. as a media event, because I believe now it's time. I need to go after much more larger audiences, not because I'm just trying to do my job. My job is I feel like I got all this education from starting 20 years ago, and it led to me being able to do things like getting recognition from Liberia. I grew up on a farm. I didn't, intend any of this when I first got started. If I'd have known the beginning from the end from the beginning, I may not have even done it, because we've been through a lot. We went through a lot. But I've got people now that want to help me market. They're marketers. They want to look at different narratives, how to promote, because one thing that might catch someone today, even in this interview, they might not like anything in the interview, but one statement triggers them. One small thing triggers them, and it sets their life on a brand new course. And, stuff like this.
Well, I think it's a really good timing for what you're doing right now, because people are seeing the Las Vegas thing. They're seeing the 9/11 thing. They're seeing the endless wars. And we're just questioning what's really going. It's becoming more obvious that something's not right. And so people are questioning this. And then the media is obviously lying to everybody, and it's becoming more obvious that the media is lying. So people are questioning this.
I know, and here's the thing I was going to say about the media just a few minutes ago and coming out with more and more material. I really want to kind of go after the alt media, because the alt media thinks that they're doing something different. And I'm not talking about you necessarily, even though some of your guests are very questionable in my mind. Robert David Steele, I got the transcript from where you interviewed him one time, and he's like, the elite should be scared of him because now he has more access to information than they do. And I'm like, who could possibly make this comment? This is just absolutely, and then these other movements, there has to be a coalescing of movements, but they have to move past what they think they know to get into a higher level of knowledge. Because in that show, you mentioned the ITNJ, and they're supposedly doing investigations on pedophilia or whatever. But even he admitted that he's their counsel. I'm like, you don't know anything about law, number one. And number two, you had just admitted that they have no jurisdiction whatsoever. So they don't understand it. They don't understand these things. And there has to be, I'm glad they're trying to stand up and
I think, I don't like to criticize them because they're trying to expose it and get the word out there and doing a forum for that. And so there's been so many people coming forward, and it's a good thing to start getting the word out there and start getting stuff known. But there should be other things that are set up more. We shouldn't be having to set up something like this. It should already be basic that we are going after this stuff. But there are so many people in positions of power that are involved. That's what's scary.
Well, what I see is when I was talking about the alt media a while ago is like breaking through all of this is it's almost like shattering mirrors. You see a reflection of it, and all of a sudden you think that this is the path, and then the next thing what would happen with me? I'm like, well, that glass just shattered because that was wrong. I thought I had constitutional rights, just found I didn't have any. How'd I do that?
But at least the alt media is at least trying to come up with the facts. You can't go to the regular media and find out what happened with Las Vegas.
They are, but they still come from a false paradigm. And false knowledge is not education.
Well, but they purposely lie. I mean, they're not even trying to come up with facts.
I understand that. But my thing is like if I looked at what happened from August of last year, I saw the alt media itself go from Vegas to pedophilia to supposedly these alleged sealed indictments. I mean, it was like boom, 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 and no one ever stayed on point. It was like the elite were still controlling the next narrative, where it didn't matter whether it was regular media, alt media, or whatever. It's like it was like this mass of confusion, and nobody's ever getting to any solution whatsoever. Because
I agree with that. The solutions aren't coming forward for sure.
Because they're on the same hamster wheel. They're not getting off the wheel. They're just moving from one thing to another, and you got here's a man that comes along, Donald Trump. I'm not here to criticize Trump or whatever. I see the system for what it is. But he creates this populist thing called Make America Great Again. How many Americans do you think want to make America great again? Or do they just want Trump to do it for them? And what does that mean? What's it going to look like when it's made great again? See, it's a populist statement that has nothing to it. It has nothing to it. And everybody locks into it, like all of a sudden this is the greatest statement that's ever occurred. And it has no beginning and it has no end. It has nothing.
Well, it's what was Obama's hope, and I don't know, whatever. Everybody comes up with some slogan for their campaign, and if it really catches on, then it really helps. It's a big marketing game, right? I mean, that's what and Trump has done some stuff locally that was pretty important, like the corporate tax rate. Now it's at least average in the world instead of the highest corporate tax rate in the world. I mean, that's ridiculous. And he is going after, supposedly making it easier to go after pedophiles, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of things that are so wrong in this country.
Yeah.
And so there has been some good things, but that's different than the level of what we're talking about. I mean, we're talking at a different level. It
is at a different level, because I listen to all that, and all of that stuff to me is noise, because I still sell the system for what it is, and I'm not paying I mean, this is the reason we moved to St. Kitts in '99. I told Sherry, I'm not paying the people any more taxes to go bomb baby factories or whatever whatever it is that they're doing. I'm not paying for this anymore. I'm not letting them use my energy for that.
Do the American people have any say anyways? Is that coming out
No.
of the Jesuits and the Crown telling the U.S. soldiers to go put their lives in danger?
Yeah, well, it's still being done. People think that Trump's being told what to do. No, they're in on it. I mean, there's been, how many people have now come out and traced the bloodlines? I mean, the Bush bloodline is nobility out of Britain. It's the same people. It's not changed. And so, you know, they want to try to make you think that they're one of you. They're not one of you. Trump is not one of you. And Walter Veith, that I mentioned a while ago, he's a nice little video he called the Trump card, and he goes into, you know, Trump's background, and it's a very well done. Now, I'm not here to try to tell people if they want to go believe it or they don't believe it or whatever. I'm on a different path. My path was the maxims that I created. There's two types of people on this planet: those doing business with immunity and those doing business with no immunity. You know, I mean, I pushed them hard enough by 2004. I told Sherry, if I don't learn international law and figure out how to get immunity, I'm going to end up in prison like all the rest of these people. Because Trump can be in office all you want to. You think that's going to change the modus operandi of IRS agents?
But now let's say you do self-determination. Do you have to give up your whole life? I mean, because people have kids, they have jobs, they have all these things. What does that mean to do self-determination? Can you still live in your own house and have your kids do their things?
Yeah, I'm still here in the U.S. and
that's why people are. Go ahead.
Well, under book in the Law of Nations, in book number 4, under section 55, under the right of embassy, I have the right to be here. I'm at peace. Every nation state on this planet has an embassy in Washington, D.C. The Mexican government has consulates in almost every big city in the U.S. This is all one big global thing. I'm not an isolationist. I'm not a separatist. I don't believe in that. You know, that's the reason why my morning conversation before I got on with you was talking about Ghana and the fact that they're wanting to give one of my friends who was a former contractor with the government. He's now trying to get things done in Ghana, and we're talking about them donating 65,000 acres, which they've said they'll do, to build a sustainable agricultural community outside of the city of Accra.
Oh, that's really great. So now, if you do self-determination, do you have to be a citizen of something? Or can you create your own little deal?
You can create little deals, but I mean, out of your shows, I'll give you an example. Like, I've gotten emails like, well, they said, well, what's the next step? Do I need to contact judges? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? And I'm like, I wrote them back and I said, no, you need to join with me on the Dom. And they wrote back and said, and what I mean, I was excited to get the email. I wrote back, I answered every single question that they had. The only one they responded to was like, well, under Resolution 2625, it says that you can form your own thing. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, yeah, you're right. You can go form your own thing. You don't have to join the Dom. I said, but I'm building Dom. I'm not building your state. So
your goal is to bring in more citizens to Dom.
Well, more sovereign members, more people that are wanting to build a new society. So I really wish that like the Law of Nations. The Law of Nations, actually, the subtitle of Law of Nation is the law of nature as applied to the conduct of societies and sovereigns. Society is really where it's at. It's a new society. You can call it, every word. How does every word become a bad word? You know, the word statism has become like, synonymous with evil and Satan and everything else. I mean, so people take these connotations of words that really don't mean anything. The bottom line of it is it's all about contract, and it's all about what you're in collusion with. And if you don't like what you're in collusion with, under this doctrine of pater per tree, where the king is the daddy state, he's the daddy. Well, if you don't like daddy's rules and daddy house, then get out of daddy's house, go get your own house, build your own rules.
It's like having your own company. You don't like the company you're part of, so right. You can quit it and start your own company or join another company.
It's not even really that complicated, but it's not easy. It's not like I said about vigilance or whatever. Now, I'm actually trying to make it easier on people. I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. And that's the reason I do the training and the DVDs and the education or whatever. My job is to help demystify the law and compress people's time frames. That's my job. That's what I feel like my job is now, in addition to all this other stuff with, I honestly looked at building it as I'm a businessman that learned the law. And once I figured out, okay, if you're going to start a business, better advertise, you better have some recognition, right?
So do you believe that you've gained rights by doing self-determination? Do you feel safer?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And why do you feel safer than before?
Because they honor the contracts. One of my presentations on the DVD set is that the United States honors the contracts. I was actually told that by a gentleman named Richard James McDonald back in 2006 when we were talking. I was at his house and we were talking about the law of nations, and he actually pulled up the book. I have it over here somewhere, but he had an older copy. He had a much older copy than this, way back from the 1700s. And I asked him, I said, have you read it? He said, yes, I've read it 5 times, and I will tell you that the United States operates by this book right here. Now, he was still teaching some crap on state sovereignty, and I said, well, if they operate by that book, why are you teaching anything else? There's nothing else to teach.
And what did he say?
He said, well, he was going to give up doing that, but, whatever, I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. We're not involved in anything together today.
So why do you think somebody like Peter Thiel is trying to help get all these smaller countries formed? Does he think, what is he doing with that? Do you have any idea?
I can't figure him out. He actually founded the Seasteading Institute, if you're familiar with what that is.
No, what does his thing do?
Building floating cities in the ocean.
Oh, the floating, okay, I know what that is, okay.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about something else. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff on that. He's the one that's been doing that. Okay.
Well, he's not anymore. I don't know what happened, but he's also now a member of the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations of the Bilderbergers. He's worth probably like $35 billion now or something like that, something ridiculous. So some of these guys, Elon Musk, and what's really kind of interesting is who's the other, Zuckerberg. It's like if they ever go off plantation a little bit, they get attacked. Look at what's happening to him right now, man. They're just like the media, all the media.
Oh yeah, they cream people if they're not on their agenda. They can take anybody down for anything. Now, do you ever get worried that you might be targeted?
No.
And why not?
I think those days, well, because I say this, the test never ends. I watched Hut River Province Principality is actually the oldest micronation out there. They got recognition from the Queen of Great Britain 47 years ago. But the test never ends. And so the Australian Tax Office came after him for like $2 million or something like that. I don't know what it was. So Hut River's been there for a long time. They claim to have 15,000 citizens. And I don't do the whole citizen thing. That's not what we're doing. We're doing more of the, people come in and they pledge. They actually become signatory to the compacts. Through their own personal declarations and things that I have set up for people to do, to prove that they know what self-determination is, to prove that they have a background in international law. Because I take this seriously, and I know that the people at the top take this seriously. They're not interested in giving immunity for people coming out like this. I'm very much cognizant of that. I'm not here to cause them a problem. I'm going to maintain the peace under what they call the international public order. But Hut River Province, they got attacked by the Australian Tax Authority, and he put a stupid straw man argument into the court about the uppercase, lowercase, or whatever. I'm like, you have recognition from the Queen. Why didn't you put that into court? Making any other argument just shows me that you don't really understand international law.
So then what happened there?
He stepped down and turned it over to his son.
And was his son more...
I don't know. I really don't know that much about him.
Interesting.
I don't know that much about him anymore, but he's older now. He formed this 47 years ago. He's 91 now. So he's now stepped down. And I don't see that anything's ever going to happen with this judgment against them for $2.1 million or whatever. It's just a civil thing. I don't think they'll do anything to him necessarily. But again, like I said, the test never ends. I think it never ends. Now, are they going to test me anyways? I went through one 3 years ago, and
they see you as it's like you're like a little competition, but you're not. It's like a big company and then a tiny little micro company.
Yeah, I could go into that. It was a thing that happened. I had some things disappear out of my car. My attaché disappeared. Strange stuff started appearing on blog websites about me, my grandfather. The person writing their pen named Lucy, which was my grandmother's maternal grandmother's name was Lucy. And it was written, I mean, you could tell it was not written by a woman. I mean, there was no way it was written by a woman. And the date was very specific to something that we had done in the past, the date that it ended up on that blog website. So I figured it was probably somebody who's been the same one that's been watching for a while. They had a specific one that was watching in 2006. But in 2006 was when I wrote my Declaration of Peace and Reconciliation to the U.S., and I apologized for my ignorance in challenging their courts because I wanted peace. I mean, they knew that. I had moved to St. Kitts to get out of here because peace I wanted. And the right of self-determination is found under peaceful settlement of dispute.
And so once you did that, things started to settle down.
We settled, and there was that whatever happened that was in 2006, 2007. Once they wrote me back as ambassador, I never heard from them again. Not for years, not until 2015. And I didn't hear from anybody then. It's just that weird stuff was going on. And there was somebody in particular that I was around at the time claiming to be former DOD or whatever. I'm not sure if he was sent to make it look like I was involved in something I shouldn't be involved in or whatever. But that all got settled, and I haven't seen anything since then. And people say, well, don't you have a problem with stuff like that you're going to have to go through another test? Yeah, well, I look at it like this. They've been running this planet for a long time. And if I can't sidestep a landmine every once in a while, then I don't deserve this. If I can't sidestep something, if I can't be knowledgeable enough to handle my own affairs and do it properly and maintain the international public order, then I don't need the position. I don't deserve the position. That's my attitude.
So did you have to change your name?
I didn't have to, but I did. But that was for reasons of my own, not reasons that they put forward. What
was your name before, or don't you want to share that?
William David Parker was my given name by my family name. I changed it to David Williams.
Oh, that's about the same. You just switched it around.
Well, first of all, I never liked my first name being William anyway, because I was always gone by David, but there was another reason. I mean, it was something that happened in court back in November 3rd, 2006, something that happened in court when I actually took the witness stand in a case. I had to state my name for the record. I have no clue why I said it. I just went, I'm William David, formerly of the Parker family. And the attorney looked at me like I lost my mind. It was a U.S. attorney up in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
So then you did it for real.
Oh, well, I just went, well, apparently somebody's wanting me to change my name. It was like that universal thing. It's like, I'm not going back down that path. If I told them I'm formerly, then I'm going to be formerly. Well, my thing is that even with that court case, if I had to, this path is for those that, are wanting more. That's all I can say. And I wanted more. And I did get tested. And I don't, like I said, I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. But I'm not here to determine what people have to go through to get to this level. That's going to be up to them. It's going to be up to what they're willing to do and how much they're willing to learn, how much they're willing to study, how much they're willing to say, yes, I want to be involved, I want to contribute, and I don't want to contribute to that over there anymore. That's the big issue for me. So all this stuff that we've been talking about, if we go full circle here, you remember me talking, I named it Matrix Solutions for a reason. And I've talked about this, and it's on deprogrammingseries.com. The video I do there, you actually see this little graphic right here. Now, I made that acronym, the FARM, because you can go look it up on their website. It's the FAR Matrix, Federal Acquisition Regulation Matrix, but they call it the FAR. This little blue area right here, it says FAR Matrix PDF or FAR Matrix HTML on it. Now, this website's changed. Since I started talking about it, this ain't up there anymore. I had to pull this off the Wayback Machine. It's interesting how they start hiding it again, and from things that are out there in front of everyone's face. But
do you think they're hiding more stuff now than they used to?
They just make it less obvious. All this stuff right here, this FAR Matrix, is in the Code of Federal Regulations under Title 48. You can go find this under Title 48. It's not hidden. You just have to go find it. This is what the website looks like today. It just looks a little different. You mentioned something a while ago. I want to read this to you. You mentioned something about companies and employees. And of course, we've talked about, everyone wants to say, 1871 was the Corporation Act, right? And I hear these words all the time. Well, the U.S. is just a corporation. And what I don't hear is the second part of that, and that is you can't be a citizen of a corporation. I'm like, yes, you can. The East India Company owned slaves. These corporations own slaves. Of course they can own citizens. This is not even an issue. So even in the code, under record keeping, this is maintenance of individual records, United States Code, Title 5, 552A, subsection 13, the term federal personnel means officers and employees of the government of the United States, members of the uniformed services, including members of the reserve components, individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the United States government. That's every citizen. Every citizen is federal personnel in this code. Everybody.
So when everybody is considered slaves and the fight to free slavery was pretty much the fight to how you treat people in your company.
Yeah, pretty much. I just did a call yesterday with a friend of mine. It's interesting that even the slavery that they talked about in the South was not as harsh as everybody deemed it was. And I'm not saying individually some farmers or
there's some bad guys, yeah.
But there were some where they actually gave autonomy to their workers and they had brought over on ships or whatever, where they were almost self-governing, and it was better for them to keep them happy so that they would produce more. And honestly, it's Harriet Tubman who ran the Underground Railroad. She was commended for how many slaves that she released during that time of the Civil War, or she got through the Underground Railroad, and how many thousands of people that she helped out. And her comment back to that was, yes, and I could have helped thousands more if I could have just convinced them they were slaves.
Oh, they didn't even know they were slaves. That's the whole deal.
Well,
and because they were taught that you were, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But you're going to be, when you talk to people and I think about you're kind of a slave to something because you got to make money and you got to do these things. It's whether what you want to put up with and what you want to do and what you're willing to.
Yeah, I said it all the time. Dom owns me. I don't own Dom.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, you're going to be servicing something. We're put here to service. That's what we were put here for. Over all the years I've done with this, and I've heard people complain and complain and complain forever. And I'm like, either just get out or stop complaining. Just quit. This is not Planet Disney World. It's Planet Earth. I just had an email come through a few days ago, and the guy said, I just want to be left alone. And that's one I wrote back. I said, this is Planet Earth. No one's ever been left alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a fallacy. So my big thing is educating yourself and understanding what all this is about is so important. Yeah. I'm on a quest of education. That's what I personally am. And you have a series that you've put out to really help people understand this. You've spent 25 years doing this, and you can't find this information anywhere. I mean, it's an educational series.
Yeah.
And can you talk about this a little bit? Because I think that's just a wealth of information there. And it seems expensive, but once you start digging into it, it's really, for what's there, it's really reasonable.
Some of the people I've actually bought the DVDs last year, they made comments like a Jim up in the mountains of North Carolina. He's like, man, the amount of work you put in this, he said, it's worth way more than $5,000. And then even one of the presentations I did in there on banking, it was done with a gentleman named Dario Bush, who was Bolivia. He was the one I helped. I went to the Bolivian embassy and I helped them at least monitor the case enough that he ended up getting it released. He was looking at 30 to 60 years in jail.
People take university classes that cost $3,000 or whatever. So this is really not that.
The average college hour online right now costs $400 for one college hour. $400. And as I told Dario in the presentation I did, which had to do with mortgages, had to do with the mortgage documents, and I had done this with Tim Madden. Tim's a friend of mine up in Canada. He was recognized as a forensic accountant and an expert in court by the Privy Council and Parliament. And they let him come in for about 10 years, and then after that, they finally cut him off. They didn't want to hear any more about how the vagaries and the frauds that are inside the mortgage system. And but I told Dario at the very first of that conversation, I said, you can go pay $400,000 for a Harvard Law degree, and you're not going to get what I teach. You're not going to get it. They're not going to tell you, because they want these attorneys doing the specific things that they do for the system, and that's it. They're not.
And I have a link there so that people can go and look at your stuff. It's up here and below in the description. Can you give people an idea of what's in it? Because I know it talks about self-determination, what all those components are, but what else does it teach that you're just not going to get elsewhere?
Like I've always considered that I did a 5-part series called the Extrication series, and it's I think it's the best one on there because I get into the tricks and traps of what it means, because self-determination can actually take 2 paths. It could take a path where it says that you can integrate with an already existing state. Well, you can go integrate with Vietnam and become a Vietnamese citizen. Does that gain you any more freedom or any immunities? No. So you can take that path to go integrate as a citizen in Britain. You could go do anything. And the UDHR, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, now says in Article 15, no one can be deprived of a nationality, and nobody can be deprived of wanting to change their nationality. They don't even have to have a reason anymore. But if you're going to exercise self-determination, in my opinion, the founders of the USA said it best. You better state to a candid world the reasons that you're breaking these political bans. Otherwise, you're just on somebody else's plantation anyway.
Yeah, you need to know what you're doing. You need to understand all this stuff. And I'm learning a lot through all these conversations, and I need to learn a lot more.
Well, one of the things that I break down is the words and language. I became a linguist through this, and I did one called The Language of the Imps, and then I did the Logos of the Imps, because it goes back to these logos that we're talking about here. Symbology is everything to them, and they put it everywhere. In D.C., the Statue of Liberty has a plaque on it where it was donated by the Freemasons of France to the Freemasons of America. That's the Statue of Liberty. Every cornerstone of almost every building in D.C. has Masonic symbology on it. Okay, so you either accept it, or if you don't accept it, then the only way to do something about it is doing this. And it's what they did. It's what they did when they wrote their Declaration of Independence. And they said right in there, we do this for ourselves. And, we pledged to each other. They didn't say we pledged to everybody else. We pledged to each other.
But the thing with them is they didn't win the war, and now they're in debt, and it screwed it all up.
Well, but they came to a compromise. The compromise was when it came to the debt, they're not paying the debt. They're transferring that on the back of the citizens, which is what they always did.
And that's where the Federal Reserve and all the other crap comes in. And
I just look at it as a joint partnership. And the beauty of the joint partnership was, if you go back in time, all the original grants for the Virginia colony and Pennsylvania colony or whatever, they were all arguing back and forth with each other, and they had tariff wars going on. And even after the Revolutionary War, when the treaty was signed, they quit paying the debt. Washington and James Madison, they were majorly upset with all of these guys about, even Washington said, man is not going to do the right thing unless there's a coercive force put on him to do it. That's what Washington said. And he said, things can't continue on in this train. What's going to be done with these 13 disunited states? So they were back to infighting among each other. By the time you get around to the Constitution, they haven't paid that debt. It looks like the greatest corporate merger that's ever existed. They put it all up under one central government, and now all the states are all happy and cooperating with each other. And the states being the original grants, proprietary governments that were set up. And
I wish we learned that in school now. That would give us such a different perspective. Now, do you have that in your DVD set? Do you talk about all that as well?
Every single bit of it, yeah. All of it.
It's just a really good, rich education that you're not going to get elsewhere. I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing, and it's so deep. It's so hard for you to do these hour-and-a-half shows because it's so much material that you're trying to give us information, but there's so much depth to all this. And so you can't get this kind of wealth of information anywhere else. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me again today. I thought this was one of our better shows.
Well, I hope so. I hope we covered most of everything. One of the things that if I had to point out anything that I didn't cover, and that's go look up Title 50 in the code under war powers and emergency powers. You remember me mentioning something in the Constitution where it says that they had the power to pass all laws necessary and proper, the Congress does. The war powers actually extends that to any agency or agent, which means they can actually make law on the streets. That it says that the necessary and proper clause doesn't just extend to Congress, but it extends to agencies and agents.
Although they would never allow that in our current paradigm.
Well, I think everything comes down to, I'm going to give you an example of what I see goes on when I talk about the bright lights of the media sometimes actually do hit, and it does make a difference. I know people who've been beat up just like Rodney King got beat up in LA by those cops. If it hadn't been caught on video, forget it.
Oh, exactly.
If it had not been, so sometimes it's all done for political expediency to calm down the public, and it's like, and if you look at overall, like the United States of America, everybody ever hears about sports. The word sports means distraction. It means diversion. And it was used by the Caesars even with the Circus Maximus. That's what intermission was. Intermission was to allow the people in the stands, if they had some kind of grievance against Caesar, he always came for the first half of the horse races in the Circus Maximus, and then he always left afterwards because they got a business to go run. They got an empire to run. They don't have time to listen to these people gripe and complain. They might talk about sanitation in the Greek Quarter or whatever, and they would always let it build up to a crescendo during intermission, just enough so that Caesar would snap his finger or wave his hand, and they'd bring the horses back out, and the next thing is going on, sit down, the horses are back. We don't have time to complain about this crap now. The horses are here.
Just give them enough time to complain so that they feel like they have a voice, and then let's move on.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about that, and we'll go real quick about people having governments over them and people over them. I called it language of the imps. If you watch the movie Gladiator, remember this movie Gladiator? If you look on the back of the chair that Caesar sat in, it actually says IMP, which stands for Imperial or Imperium, like the empire, IMP on the back of that chair. That's what I believe the elite, they're behind the scenes are saying, yep, that's what you have ruling over you, imps. See them? They're right there. IMP, right on the back of the chair. And of course, above that was the same eagle on the back of the Roman chair, the back of the Caesar's chair, his throne. Same eagle that's in the U.S. seal today. It's not changed.
Mm-hmm. That is kind of interesting when you look at history. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I really appreciate it. And again, we'll have the links to your information here on the screen and below, and thank you.
I know it kind of goes all over the map, but you know what? This is a huge picture that's been painted over the last 4,000 years. There's no magic bullet to this. There's no holding up the cross and the vampire dissolves. That's not,
Well, will you stay for my Patrons?
Sure.
Answer one more question? Okay. Thank you so much.
All right.